let's queer up trans rights. 25,000 march on London in 5th Trans Plus Pride event.
The trans community is not some big bad cabal of secret endocrinologists that want to trans all of the children, and we've got a secret transgenderification beam. We're just people, we're just living our lives. This parade is a protest. It's a protest for our rights, the rights that we deserve to have just as much as anyone else does.
So true. And I think as well, like, I genuinely believe that everyone is a bit more transgender than they think, and I think that's important. The things that we're asking for, you know, they benefit everybody. It's about the autonomy over people's own bodies and the autonomy over your identity and like medication and everything like that, and also the freedom from like oppressive norms of beauty and that like constrict people every day.
This weekend, around 25,000 people took to the streets of London to demand equal rights for trans people in the UK. The Trans Plus Pride 2023 event, which is the 5th of its kind to take place in the capital, saw marchers rally through Trafalgar Square and Piccadilly before eventually culminating in Hyde Park Corner. Speakers included performance artist Travis Alabanza, actress Yasmin Finney, and model Munroe Bergdorf, with the latter reminding the gathered crowds that the event was primarily a protest, a day about both love and rage. Most of her, and everyone's anger, was targeted at the Tories, whose polarizing and often needlessly cruel policies have led to an increase in transphobic harassment. Bergdorf said, quote, "We are in a particularly sinister moment in history where trans rights are being weaponized by the media and government in a senseless culture war that benefits no one but the ruling class," end quote. In the UK, London's Trans Pride follows the news earlier that in the week that the trans charity Mermaids had its case to appeal the LGB Alliance getting charitable status dismissed. It also came after the news that the UK ranks as one of the least supportive countries for trans people in the world, as well as puberty blockers being denied to trans youth and sporting organizations placing bans on trans participation. Anyone want to act surprised real quick? Anyone? Waiting. It's funny, you think like if you were the country that actually went and colonized everybody else in the world, that you might pick up a thing or two and learn how to be inclusive and talk to each other.
That's why there's homophobia in the Caribbean and in Africa. Yes. Is colonization of Britain.
Right. Although the UK there been some recent apologies to the community. I mean, there have been some changes in recent months. I mean, there's still a long way to go.
I think I saw that in The Crown.
Well, I think it's just a reminder that we continue to export hate from this country. Right. I don't know if you saw the story last night about sharing of medical records now in Tennessee. Is that right? In Tennessee for people that are getting trans medical services. I mean, what could be more invasive than sharing the medical records against your authorization, which I believe we have an act against that called HIPAA, that now we're sharing them with, again, red state attorney generals who are overstepping their boundaries and being invasive in the lives and healthcare of your own personal decisions. So, I mean, this story is not shocking, but, again, we continue to be kind of the breeding ground for these really terrible, and they're talking about cruel policies. We should be looking at ourselves right now, which of course we are.
25,000 people to show up. That's pretty impressive. I think that's amazing.
Did that excite you?
It did. I was just sitting here wondering, like, what would it take for us to have something like that here?
An act of God.
I'm in agreement.
Literally. With all due respect, in South Florida and other places in the country, I will just say, in my time here in South Florida, the most transformational issue that I have faced in LGBT is trans. In coming down here, I have said repeatedly, I can't tell you, and this was working with RuPaul and the show for 7 years, I can't tell you I certainly didn't have any friends that were trans, and I can't tell you that I knew anyone is trans. And now when I say that, I go, God, Elle, you were really stupid, because you worked at RuPaul's Drag Race and it was full of trans people, but you couldn't talk about it. And no, there could be no trans people in RuPaul, and RuPaul has evolved. It's transformational for me because the answer to your question is organizations like Trans Inclusive struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle. Every step you take is a step that is a fight up a mountain to get to the top of the mountain. Every single step, including in one of the gayest places on the planet, which is here in South Florida. I got to a point, I just make an observation. Congratulations to London. The march looked amazing, and Trans Pride looked amazing. But I got to the point where I would sit at this show and say, or we would do special programs with Trans Inclusive of a special edition of Queer News Tonight, where I was like, LGB and Q, where are you? When are you coming in to support? I just don't understand why you aren't. And to me, I will just say, I have just in the last 10 days, your husband was with me, we were in Medellin in Colombia at Pride, and 90,000 people marched inside the parade, not just watching. Inside the parade, 90,000 people.
Oh my goodness.
And the entire parade was dedicated to the trans community.
Oh, that's amazing.
I watched the greatest embracement of the trans community I have ever seen in my entire life. It put every single thing that I've ever seen in the United States completely to shame. In every possible way, the number of flags that were flown, the number of messages of support, the amount of love that was demonstrated, even to the numbers on the floats done in numbering with the trans colors on the numbers of the floats in every possible way. And the most amazing thing about it is no one cared one iota about the issue of trans. There was no politics behind it at all. It was just acceptance and support the community. We have so far to go here in America. There's just no comparison. 25,000 in the UK. It's a very problematic place still in Britain. But other places in the world, the Netherlands, in Medellin, Colombia, they just think in a completely different way. And the two big reasons are the radical GOP, the radical evangelicals, and supported by media like Newsmax and Fox News. And as a result, they just battle and battle and battle, which makes your job almost impossible.
So when you see me missing and you see a picture of me on a beach somewhere, and I'm looking
You're off to Colombia?
I'm surged, and I have the most beautiful veneers and I'm smiling, I'm in Colombia.
Yes. And God bless you today.
We need to recognize the fact that it's also our community with the diet gays, right? The cisgendered Caucasian men who sit on the sidelines and let everybody else do the heavy lifting for them when they don't want to recognize that Stonewall was started by queer women of color and that they are riding on those coattails and you owe them.
Payback time.
Step up to the plate and stop being so entitled.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ+ community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.